Dr. Pablo Botas, it's a very pleasure and I feel very privileged in welcoming you this joint event. I'm certain that this is a difficult subject, especially when translating the concept and the terms to a simpler language, but I'm certain that you succeeded in achieving it. Many thanks for giving your expertise and welcome to this Greek panel. Please, you have the
Thanks a lot, first of all, for the organization, for inviting me, for having this opportunity to represent Foundation 29 and give our perspective on this problem. This is certainly a very important problem, you will see, because it can unlock a very compromising and complicated situation that actually works a little bit at a world scale. So let me just jump ahead to the presentation and to this presentation that I have prepared. You will see that it's a little bit metaphoric, and given that most assistants to this talk are from Greece, I think it's good just to have some metaphoric presentation and to illustrate the problems that made this solution needed. So I'm going to talk about making patients partner of the data collection for registry and for patient-reported outcomes. But the actual goal of doing this is to be able to produce high-quality data from patients for precision medicine. That's the ultimate goal that we're talking about here. So I'm the CEO of Foundation 29. I'm also the head of science, sorry. My background is actually in physics, and you will notice that at the beginning of the presentation a little bit. Foundation 29, as was introduced, I could pick up a little bit about that. It's a nonprofit organization from Spain. We focus on trying to provide value for patients living with a rare disease. And we are basically focusing in this area because we understand that this is the natural niche for precision medicine. We have a strong expertise in artificial intelligence and in bringing this technology to patients so that they can leverage it. So, as I mentioned, my background is in physics. I actually never work in general relativity. This is the Einstein field equation. This presentation is about gravity, and you will see why. This is an allegory, of course. We're going to start talking about orphan drugs, why they are important, and why their use case should be analyzed in order to extrapolate for precision medicine in general. We're going to be talking, of course, about data, about planes, and then about a possible solution and how to tackle this problem. So let me start off with orphan drugs, how it works in terms of the development and the approval of new drugs. First of all, orphan drugs, for those that are not familiar with them, are drugs that are designed and developed for rare diseases, for diseases that are not very common, that have few patients, a small prevalence across the population. They act as a placeholder for precision medicine because you have the problem of having to aggregate data from different stakeholders, even to develop drugs that are almost personalized and drugs that are targeting a specific mutation and so on. So they are a very good example of the problems that we're going to be facing when we want to work in the precision medicine space. Let's start analyzing the drugs for Dravet syndrome from 2008 to 2021, which is the present. You will see that basically there were 3 drugs to treat this syndrome. This is a very strong epileptic encephalopathy syndrome. It's just a complicated disease, of course. But the bottom line here is that the basic treatment didn't really change. There are 2 new drugs that were added to the possible treatments for these patients, but they treat the symptoms. They are not strong or technologically advanced enough to go and treat the inherent cause. And we're talking here about 13 years, which is a decent time nowadays. And we have the example of the COVID vaccine and the technology that we have nowadays. And of course, there was a worldwide coordinated effort to some degree, but still, this could be applied to this type of diseases. The bottom line is that the process is very, very slow. If you look at this graph, which is the number of of drugs that got the orphan designation, you see that it keeps increasing. So the market is growing, but somehow the approvals is basically stagnating. It doesn't grow as much. And there are many reasons for that. But the main reason is that it's hard to demonstrate that they are effective. And the answer is actually in the hands of patients. So there is a need for this data-driven boost for this process. We need to know better and faster whether or not something is working in real life. And patients have the key to this. The bottom line is that we're not learning quickly enough. And this is the only slide that I have about planes, but I wanted to include planes on the first slide. This is a black box. It's a device that is, well, you know probably what it's about. It's a device just to collect all the information about a given flight. And in the event of an accident, it's very well protected, so you can learn what happened and never make that mistake again. We're not doing that in medicine. In medicine, we have a complicated system. And this is the part I'm going to be talking about gravity. Basically, you know that the Earth, it can pull things with its gravitational field, and it can retain satellites that they just revolve around the Earth. And this is sort of an illustration of the field. Something similar happens with hospitals, clinical trials, and many other institutions or many other efforts, right? But let's just focus on hospitals and clinical trials for the sake of simplicity. Basically, they also have sort of a gravitational field. They produce and attract clinical data, tons of it. You go into a hospital and every little measurement of a patient should be recorded if it's not recorded. Additionally, they also produce tons of data that are reported by patients. However, even though hospitals and other institutions, of course, collect vast amounts of data, they are collectors and custodians of this data. They do not own the data, and any reuse of this data depends on whether or not the patient allows that. And going back to a patient to ask for permission for a research project or something like that, it's something that is not working. It's not being done. It's not an agile process. So the conclusion here is that patients own the key. In reality, if you just change the coordinate system and you focus on the patient, you'll see that the patients also have a gravitational field. They also produce a lot of data themselves. But not only that, they can produce this data through wearables and so on. This would be an illustration of a wearable that produces a lot of data that belongs to the patient. They go to different doctors and hospital systems. And after every visit, they produce more and more data. But they are not harnessing it. And there used to be a technological barrier behind this. But currently, technology is so much advanced, and the data sharing protocols are so much advanced that it's just becoming low-hanging fruit. So it's something that needs to be done to give patients the power to own their data and to decide what to do with it. I'm going to use the example of the Duchenne muscular dystrophy patient community. I think they are very advanced in this conversation. We collaborate with them. I'm going to tell you later what we do with them. But basically, they have these 6 guidelines. And I obtained these from just personal communications with Elizabeth, and also from some presentations that we did together. Basically, what they want is for the data to be optimally reused for drug development and care. They want to be sure that relevant data is collected. And this is very important in order to have new drugs approved, because if it's not relevant to the patients, it's not a significant benefit. And if it's not a significant benefit, the drug will not be approved. The placebo data currently from clinical trials is not being published in general. So that's a problem that needs to be fixed. Patients need to be able to decide about the use of their own data. Patients, we've seen that they are very willing and interested in sharing data for the good of the community. And clinical trial data should be returned to patients. So in an effort to tackle all these 6 guidelines, we partnered with them and created a pilot. The pilot is called Health 29. This is an effort that Foundation 29 and the Duchenne Parent Project, mainly from the Netherlands, started. And it focuses on these 4 areas. We want to be able to provide social questions and answers for guidance for the families. We want to be able to collect these patient-reported outcome measures, which basically means what matters to patients. We want to be able to collect precise genotype information when available, and precise phenotype information. Phenotype information is just a longitudinal representation of the symptoms of the patient. So with this, basically, this is just a video of the platform working. This is the social component of it. Patients and families can simply type their questions, and their questions will be analyzed automatically and matched, again, a database of answers, and the best possible answer will be fed. This is not a conversational interface, but it's a very advanced frequently asked questions system in order to retain the knowledge. And this is very, very important, to be able to retain knowledge within the patient community. This is just another example, so I'm going to stop that one. The patient-reported outcomes, it needs to be customized by every single patient organization, because different diseases have different needs. So this is necessary in order to have a system that is capable of doing this type of things. It needs to be standardized and have quality controls from the patient organization board. It should be able to construct a full set of clinical data, and it should be easy to use to fill by users. Currently, what we've seen, and this is important feedback, is that patients generally don't want to fill out a long form. So we're trying to investigate more conversational interfaces and quick queries and quick polls in order to collect this data slowly, not at once. Of course, the genotype, it's a complicated matter. Most patients don't know whether they have it or not, and they don't know the format they have it in. So the simplest solution at this point that we find is just upload everything that you have, and we'll slowly keep standardizing this. Down the line, it will allow you to do clustering according to genetic variations and the clinical symptoms and so on. So it's a very key component here, especially in order to develop genetic gene therapy. Another key aspect is the phenotype. Currently, we generally collect it through forms, but we already have the technologies that's not implemented in this pilot to automatically analyze text pretty much in any language, in 50+ languages, and find symptoms, find diagnosis, find drugs, find a lot of entities. And as I mentioned, the technological barrier is falling quickly. So it's time actually to go and pick up this low-hanging fruit. So all in all, what this constructs is the message that patients need data lockers, because we've seen that they attract data. They are capable of producing it in vast amounts, and we just need to give them control of their own data, so that they can have it available at all times for emergencies, so that these data can be used for questions that are relevant to the community, for example, drug development, for new technologies, even for daily life. And this is the part of the QA that I mentioned that is very important for these patient organizations. It's just a more flexible system because they are the owners of this data. So it's easy to deploy new technology on top of that because they are active in this community. Furthermore, it will give patients a very effective voice in drug development. I mentioned a couple of times the importance of significant value for new drugs. So it's very key for patients to have the ability to collect the data that they need. And then there is a process, so to approve this data set by EMA, by other entities, but this is the first step. And in any case, whatever is done, even with Health 29, and that we are now working to extend this beyond or far beyond the pilot and make it more of a spread effort across many patient organizations, it needs to be interoperable. It needs to provide ownership for patients, portability so that they can share the data, and basically implement fair interfaces for this. So this is my message. If you want to to take a final image about it, I recommend just thinking about the patient surrounded by data and satellites. And this is the coordinate system that we want to use. GDPR warrants basically this viewpoint, this coordinate system, and the technology is not anymore a barrier. So with that, I finished my presentation. I hope that it was in plain words enough. I know I was talking about general relativity for a bit, but I think it was still simple enough and direct.